As a question for us, from our part to you, in cases of some countries, namely Lebanon, and like many other countries in the region, have been passing now by what we can call a transitional period, whereby the state and the government authorities are redesigning their approaches. How can we make sure that climate actions are being dealt with, maybe through the local government, maybe through UNDPs and other instances? How do you see it in this transition period?
Well, Naguib, thank you for welcoming me here. But transitions are sometimes a good opportunity. It does create that space when you're, let's say, rebuilding something or relaunching something. So we see it as an opportunity rather than a challenging opportunity, obviously, given the circumstances where we really think that specifically climate change might become much more relevant. Because if you really think about it, and if the basic services, public transport, electricity, if you really relaunch it in the proper way, climate change could be very central in all this. Obviously, local authorities would still have, an important role to play in there. The only problem now is, for them to have access to real financing. A lot of them do have some projects, maybe in their heads, some on paper, some reaching feasibility levels. The major issue is how we can channel that financing to them. Not necessarily them being the persons co-signing on the financing, but we need to find a certain structure that would enable them to benefit from that financing.
We lately talked and discussed a lot and started already first steps to build a special unit in Lebanon that would help the municipalities. One of the actions that we've seen doing is that are waiting for important and much larger finance. There are smaller solutions that can be done by technicians or clients, like repairing pipes, solar energy, very small solutions. What do you think of this?
The idea of having a unit at the Ministry of Environment and supporting the municipalities came primarily from a political perspective that, there's a push towards decentralization and that needs to happen sooner or later, sooner better than later. So from that perspective, there was that request that came up from the Ministry of Environment. Because the ministry, when it was looking at the solid waste file, realized that there's a lot of support required for a large number of municipalities in helping them, providing the information that they require. And the reason for that is most of the municipalities have limited resources, which also limit them in embarking in actually doing basic needs work, at the municipal level. We know of municipalities that have around an annual budget of fairly $40,000 or less. So you can imagine how difficult it would be for them to engage in such work, yet try to come up with an investment that requires a certain higher capital cost, even if it doesn't have an O&M cost eventually. So yeah, from that perspective, that was important. Again, we need to find a way of channeling the financing to them. Otherwise, currently what it exists in the country is very much private sector oriented. It even doesn't allow municipalities, as far as I know, to engage in commercial activities, in the sense that if they could install, as an example, a centralized or solar power plant that could be providing electricity to the village, to the town, but the extra to be sold back to the grid, that's not yet there, which could be something that, with a small change in legal in the legislation, we might be able to actually encourage the municipalities to do that.
That's an excellent perspective, but from this angle, maybe we should think that the first task of the unit is to create the enabling environment for actions to be taken, both legal and institutional and social.
Absolutely. I mean, otherwise, even if you prepare your actions, but you won't be, I mean, legally you cannot implement them, then it's just, paper. I agree with you. One of the major tasks would be to look at what needs to change from a legislative perspective, so that municipalities or whatever actions they're coming with are viable in terms of implementation. And that's where we can start mixing local financing with international financing, and not only relying, grants and or someone else taking the loan and providing the guarantees on behalf of the municipality.